Bird of Prey 5. El Karuga.
Qapla!
I'm going to take this opportunity, however, to suggest that we all hail Karuga. That's all I'm saying.
Forgive me, Doctor. I'm receiving a number of distress calls. I don't doubt it.
Y'all remember to tip your waitresses. Have a mighty fine night.
If you come in peace, surrender or be destroyed. If you're here to make war, we surrender.
Both good. The important thing is I'm meeting new people.
When the appointed hour arrives, the Marauders will deactivate their cloaking devices and begin transporting Klingon shock troops directly to the landing zone.
Landing zone? Where? Tell me.
Why not? Your feeble weapons will be useless against us. We will kill all your males and take your females to mate with.
All right. Now the Federation's taking over, whether you like it or not. You people, you've been running this planet like a piecework factory. From now on, it's going to be under one roof. You're going to run it like a business. And that means you're going to make a profit.
Look at these 3 words written larger than the rest, with a special pride never written before or since. Tall words, proudly saying, "We the people."
Hi, I'm Nicole DeBoer. I played Lieutenant Ezri Dax on DS9, and I welcome you to Bird of Prey 5 channel. Hail Karoga.
Hello world, it's Bird of Prey 5, Qapla, and welcome to a special January 10th stream for Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. 18 years today. 18 years ago today, on January 10th, 2006, a great man died. And I feel compelled to talk to you about it, because I knew him better than most, not as well as I'd hope, but better than most on this planet. And to know him, not, there's that Star Trek TNG episode where that asshole takes over Data's body and does this whole bullshit speech about to know him was to love him, and to love him was to know him. And I honestly just want to, get so sick of what he says. You want to throw up yourself. But there are people out there who approach. I'm not saying they're that high and mighty, but there are people out there who actually approach those levels. And I would say Mr. Frank, as we called him, maybe sometimes we call him Mr. Sidney. His name was Sidney E. Frank, but depending on who was talking and why, we had good reasons to choose whether we were talking about Mr. Frank or Mr. Sidney. They were both the same guy. Um, he, he approached it, and you could have been very, very lucky to know this man. There are countless people who owe small fortunes to this man, even large fortunes to this man. There are countless children. Well, by now, if they were 18, it was 18 years ago he died. By now, those kids have grown up. Probably most of them have either started or finished colleges through not having to spend a dime of their own money. And not only were the multi hundreds of millions of dollars that he gave to Brown University, but he personally picked up the college payments of a number of his employees. And when, not me, no, not me, unfortunately. I had already paid off my college debts by the time he started getting that college payment bug. And also, he would give that as a wedding gift or a welcome to the world if you just had a baby or something. Then he would say, "Yay! You know what? If your kid ever wants to attend Brown University, not only do they have a spot for them, but they have payment paid in full." And well, I might not have wanted my child to attend Brown University necessarily. I suppose it would have been nice for them to have had an option to do so, but being I could not find a woman to impregnate within the time period needed, it was never much of an option. And I'm sorry, guys, we're doing it a little different today. I've yet to look at the chat because this is not a bed life. This is a day I'm talking about a tribute to Mr. Sidney E. Frank. And if you're not sure who we're talking about, if you go to Wikipedia, you can see the wikis for Sidney Frank. Sidney E. Frank, born October 2nd, 1919, lived to January 10th, 2006, was an American businessman and philanthropist. He became a billionaire through his promotion of Grey Goose vodka and Jägermeister, although the billionaire part was solely from the sale of Grey Goose vodka. Grey Goose, they got it going in 1994, I believe, and by 2002 sold it to Bacardi for $2+ billion. Early life, family, and education. I don't know how accurate all of this Wikipedia article is. I will read it and make uh, corrections as I see fit. Frank was born to a Jewish family in Montville, Connecticut. That, I believe, is true. However, I can tell you by the time I got to know him, which was he was already in his let's see, I got to him. He was 80 years old. Um, he, he was not practicing Jew, and hadn't been for I have no idea how long. Um, but uh, yes, he was. He did grow up Jewish. His father and mother were Abraham and Sarah Frank. He grew up in Norwich, Connecticut, and graduated from Norwich Free Academy in 1937. He attended Brown University, class of 1942, but left because he could only afford 1 year of tuition. It's actually 1 semester of tuition. He later made an enormous gift to the university to help ensure no student would ever be forced to leave Brown because of inability to pay tuition. That is true. During World War II, Frank worked for Pratt & Whitney as a manufacturer's representative in India, exploring ways to improve engine performance, enabling aircraft to deal with high altitudes encountered in the CBI theater. This was particularly important in improving the performance of the transport aircraft flying supplies into China. The use of alcohol injection aircraft engines was one of the approaches taken. It sounds correct. I don't have any reason to think it isn't. Career. Frank's first wife, Louise Skippy Rosensteel, was the daughter of Louis Rosensteel, founder of Schenley Industries, one of the largest American distilleries and spirit importers. Frank joined Schenley after his marriage to Rose and the company presidency, but was forced out in a family dispute in 1970. So Mr. Frank would often tell us, he would talk to us, hey, Joe, you know how the easiest way to make your first $1 million? No, Mr. Frank. What's the easiest way to make your first $1 million? You marry it. And he would laugh, because that's what he did. He, Louise Skippy Rosensteel was a very rich woman. Her family was very rich, and to know he did not hesitate to let us all know he married her because it was the easiest way to get his first $1 million, to get in the game, and he used it. He used his new family connections to play the game, and it worked. He did some wonderful things for Schenley, and he got promoted very quickly. But and this is a big but eventually, unfortunately, his wife got ill, and Mr. Frank, he was still a relatively young man, and he got a new secretary, and from what I've been led to understand, he ended up pretty much leaving his wife for his secretary. That obviously did not go over well with the people who he was working for. I mean, they made him and they could unmake him, and they basically told him so. And so the only thing he had left to do was to make his own business, because no one else was going to hire him. But you know what? He did it, and he did build his own business with his experience, and he brought in his family, his brother. He brought in, and that's why they were both called Mr. Frank, his brother Gene. So we had Mr. Gene and Mr. Sidney. And I had the pleasure of knowing Mr. Gene as well. Mr. Gene was the older brother, but Sidney was the, not to say the brains, but Sidney was the head of the operation. Mr. Gene was president of the company, but Mr. Sidney was founder and CEO of the company at the time. And they were both good to know, and they got the company going, and they let's just say all went well. All went well. And yes, he went on to marry his secretary, and she was the next Mrs. Frank, second and only, second and last wife, in his, who I also had the pleasure of knowing, and I believe she is still alive and well out there. And yeah, she is a interesting woman, but she is, I believe she values her privacy these days. So I'm not going to go into anything with her, but yes, she's a nice person. In 1973, his first wife died. He started his own company, Sidney Frank Importing Company, where he served as chairman and chief executive officer. The company is based, let's say was based, in New Rochelle, New York, where Frank lived. He had a home in Rancho Santa Fe, California as well. He had homes in various places. Manhattan, La Jolla, Rancho Santa Fe, God knows where else. In 1973, he secured the importing rights to Jägermeister, a traditional German digestive. Frank's first big success with his own company was with Jacques Cardin Brandy, a brand he purchased from Seagram in 1979. I don't know if that counts as a big success, but I guess so. In the 1980s, Jägermeister became popular with college students in Louisiana, and Frank promoted it heavily, turning a specialty brand developed to help digestion into a mainstream success, widely drunk in ice-cold shots and used in Jello shooters. I am not aware of anyone using Jägermeister in Jello shot. Oh my God. In 1997, he developed Grey Goose vodka, made in France by Francois the Bout. I don't know. I can't pronounce French names. And so successful in promoting it, he sold the brand to Bacardi for $2 billion in June 2004. The last years of his life, Frank brought Travel Savvy and Business Traveler magazine titles for $4 million. Yeah, he brought up a lot of things in the last years of his life. Why those magazines are listed here, but other things aren't, God only knows. First off, he sold Grey Goose vodka to Bacardi for $2 billion. There was also a Blue Goose gin that was also sold as part of the deal, but Bacardi killed the gin rather than bring it to market and compete with itself in gin, which is a shame because the Blue Goose gin was a beautifully designed bottle and would have been nice to have out there. The other thing that Mr. Frank had purchased in later years was Crunk energy drink, and him and Little John and Mr. Frank were in business together, pushing Crunk energy drink, a pomegranate based pomegranate and what's it? Seltzer, like bubbly, whatever it's called, like Coca-Cola, soda, energy drink that's both fizzy and pomegranate based. I actually enjoyed the taste. I was not an energy drink fan, but you had to try the merch, right? You can't sell something you don't know how it tastes, and so I did taste it and couldn't drink too much of it, but it was a flavorful drink for sure. So I don't know why they don't mention Crunk, but yeah. Philanthropy. Frank gave large bonuses to his employees and made a $12 million donation to the Norwich Free Academy in 2005. So Mr. Frank, on selling Grey Goose vodka, he did share that with the employees of his company. If you were now understand, it was only 7 years. It was only 7 years that they had Grey Goose vodka. So if you were with the company for 7 years, I believe you were guaranteed a minimum of a 100%.
Captain's log, stardate
A
7414.1.
100%.
Our best
Oh,
estimates place
thank
us
you,
some
John
4 hours
Araki.
from Earth.
John Araki with a 99-cent super chat. I'm guessing it's a super, I'm not sure if it's a super chat or a super poop, super sticker, but whatever it was, thank you, John Araki. I believe it was a 100% bonus of your salary. A 100% salary bonus. And if you were there longer than the time, it was 200%. Cody Guy, thank you. Cody Guy. Uh-oh. Cinnamon Bunny. What's going on? John Araki gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much, John Araki. 5 gifted memberships. Cody Guy, Cinnabon Bunny, John DeMarco, Bradley Briggs, and Mr. Awesome. Thank you. And, okay. Schwario, Qapla, Schwario. Multi-gunman, Qapla, multi-gunman. Captain Fandom Nerd. Hello, Captain. Hello, Captain. John Araki says 5 is the correct number of memberships to give. Indeed, because it's bird o' prey. 5. So, yeah, I mean, and then if you were there a couple of years longer, you got double your salary. If you were there longer than that, triple. And then there were people who got bonuses way above and beyond their annual salary. His personal secretary got something like 15 or 20 million dollars. And she didn't leave. She didn't retire. She stayed till the day he died, and even beyond that. She stayed until they were basically asked her to leave. Her time, she put in her time, and it was time for her to enjoy her wealth. It was time for her to go enjoy her wealth. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't have left either until I was literally in a hospital bed and couldn't get to work. And they were like, no. And they were beyond generous with me. They were paying me full salary for a long time, even though I couldn't get into work. It was only after a year that it was really finally time that they had to basically go through the motions and cut the ties, and thankfully they had a private a a system in place for paying uh, for somebody in my condition a um, uh, um, long-term disability payment, and because if not for that, I I don't know what. Mr. Frank's initial the money for Grey Goose vodka was what got me my house, but I had not been here since the beginning of Grey Goose. I had only got to the company in late. I got here in September 1999, which under his initial plan would have only given me a 50% bonus, which still was an unheard of bonus back in the day. I was flabbergasted to think I was going to be getting such a huge bonus. But the man heard about the fact that I was getting only 50%. And by this time, frankly, I had already made a name for myself. I'll be honest, I made a name for myself. I did a lot. I worked hard, and a lot of people were very happy with the job I was doing, not the least of which was Mr. Frank himself. So much so that when he heard I was, quote, only getting 50%, he took it upon himself to call up the heads of, I don't know, not payroll, the comptroller of the company, and also the chief, I don't know, operating officer. And no, he thinks that Bird O' Prey 5, despite only being there for a couple of years, well, 2004, I'd have been there 5 years. I needed to be there 7 years to be eligible for the 100% bonus. I was only there 5 years, so it was a 50% bonus. But Mr. Frank said, no, my friend Joe, he should get his 100% bonus. He deserves it. And thankfully, with that bonus, that was what was able to pay for my house at the time. Not for the house, but pay for the down payment for the house at the time. So it was a big thank you to him. I mean, I could only dream about the people who ended with millions of dollars. Uh, I'll be honest, I always figured that the day would come at some point that I would get my 1 million. All I needed was a $1 million bonus. And to be honest, living the lives we lived, I had every reason to think that if Mr. Frank was still alive, that the day would have came where I would have gotten my $1 million bonus. And it would have paid off my house, and I would have been able to put money into the bank account, and I would never have to work again. No matter what happened after that, if I had gotten my $1 million bonus, I would have had a house, I would have had money constantly coming in. It wouldn't have been enough to live a crazy life, but it would have been enough to live a normal life. And that's what I thought would end up happening. But it unfortunately that never occurred to me. It never, yeah, it didn't happen. And but you know what? Still, I wound up so much better off than I ever thought I would. So much more better off than I had any right to think I would. It's crazy. Frank donated 500,000 pounds sterling and a statue by sculptor Stephen Kettle to Bletchley Park Trust to fund a new science center dedicated to Alan Turing, and is a great supporter of the Supermarine Spitfire, commissioned a life-size statue of its designer, R.J. Mitchell, and funded a website dedicated to Mitchell's life. R.J. Mitchell, A Life in Aviation. Indeed. Those are all things he did in his last year. He gave a donation of $5 million to the New York Medical College Psychiatric Department, leading to the creation of the Sidney Frank Fellowship, which gives medical students early exposure to the field of psychiatry. His foundation has been a supporter of the Israeli Olympic Committee and has helped to offer scholarships in several Israeli sports. That's all news to me. In 2004, Frank gave $100 million to his alma mater, Brown University. At the time, the largest single contribution in the university's history, and still tied with two other gifts for that distinction. The gift provided for the Sidney E. Frank Scholarship, which funds tuition of around 130 undergraduate students from low-income families each year. In 2005, Frank donated $5 million to Brown to help with Hurricane Katrina relief efforts. In 2006, Brown University, this was after he passed, named its Life Sciences building the largest capital project to date after Frank, in recognition of a $20 million gift to support its construction. Frank, the single most generous donor in the university's history. And I'll tell you, I believe it was 2004, Brown University threw him a parade, and we were all there. His entourage. I was there taking video. Yeah. The CEO of the company was there. Mr. Frank, he was no longer CEO at this point anymore, but he was there. His kids were there. His son and his daughter. His nurses, his golfing associates, his chefs, his lawyers, everybody who traveled with him was there. His doctors were there. His nurses were there. His friends, his golf buddies, they were all there with him. They were all part of this parade, and the streets were lined. The streets of where Brown University, what's it, Rhode Island? Is it Rhode Island? I don't know. One of those fucking little states next to Connecticut. I think it's Rhode Island. Yeah. Covered the streets covered with students and students' families, and they're all cheering for Mr. Frank, a guy who put his money where his mouth was, and still you had these people. This man was literally paying to send the poorest, most desperate students to school, picking up their bills for free, and you still had people bitching. You had people bitching that, oh my God, they should not be accepting his money because, and there was, be clear, there was no actual criminal charges ever. Okay, he wasn't guilty of any crimes, but some women alleged that he may have touched them inappropriately at some point decades ago. Like, if you're gonna get pissed, if you're gonna sue somebody, if you're going to worry about something, you better do it when it makes sense to do so. Because if you wait and you're like, oh, this didn't bother me enough until, oh, now it's years later, and now I can make some publicity if I come forward now, whereas if I had come forward before, there wasn't an opportunity for publicity. Now you need to just shut the fuck up. Okay, you talk about it when it makes sense to do so, or you hold. If you're going to be quiet about it, then be quiet about it. but you make that decision first. Anyway, the point is, let's see, personal life, death, and aftermath. Frank married twice. His first wife, Louise Skippy Rosensteel, was the daughter of Louis Rosensteel. She died in 1973 at the age of 50. The two had two children. One was married and divorced from some guy, son of another guy. Frank died January 10th, 2006, on a private plane in flight between San Diego, California, and Vancouver, British Columbia, at the age of 86 from heart failure. He was declared dead in San Francisco, California. On his plane were several nurses and medical doctors, as well as a defibrillator, but he could not be revived. Services were held at Riverside Memorial Chapel. He is buried in the Rosensteel family plot at the United Jewish Cemeteries in Cincinnati. His daughter is currently chairwoman of Sidney Frank Importing Company. She is also an artist that co-founded the Tippett Rise Art Center in Montana. And again, no, these are all past tense because the Sidney Frank Importing Company doesn't exist anymore. It was purchased and taken over by Mast Jägermeister, the German company that owns Jägermeister. So the plane, he was flying to British Columbia on January 10th because he was having a experimental procedure that they were going to try to fix his heart using a procedure where they push it up through they were going to push some what's that called, valves. They were going to push some new valves up through his legs, through his vein or his artery. I don't know how it works, but they were going to go in through his leg, push it into place, and be done with it. Unfortunately, the old way of doing it would have meant a full open heart surgery, and everybody knew there was no way he would survive open heart surgery. So, but here's the problem. The initial plan was to do this procedure in Germany. The only hospital that was approved to do it at the time was in Germany. And so we were all supposed to go to Germany 2 weeks earlier, but it was Christmas. So we were all going to go to Germany over Christmas so Mr. Frank could have this procedure done in Germany in the one hospital that was doing it at the time. And being it was Christmas and Mr. Frank doesn't travel light, he traveled with several dozen people, including me. You know, I'll be honest, we were all initially a little suspect at did we really want to give our Christmases up for this? But I realized after 5 minutes of debating it to myself, I said, damn it, Joe, if you have to give up every Christmas for the rest of your life because of this, then you will damn well be happy to do so, because it means that Mr. Frank is alive. And so long as Mr. Frank is alive, I knew I really didn't have anything to truly worry about. So I actually got excited to be going to Germany. I started to learn German just a bit, and I long since forgot it. But what I did was I had the Simpsons. I had the Simpsons DVDs, and the Simpsons had German as one of the languages. So I was just going to start watching the Simpsons in German. And I knew the Simpsons backwards and forwards, in and out, that if I just watched it in German, surely I would understand German. And I still think that would have worked. But as it turned out, not everybody was as gung-ho about going to Germany over Christmas. And as they found out that if they waited just another couple of weeks, that this other university hospital in Vancouver was going to be getting the same procedure. And Vancouver is so much closer to San Diego than Germany is. So we're like, okay, I guess. And they, he literally is flying with doctors and nurses and a defibrillator. Nobody thought that this would happen. And unfortunately, from what I'm told, he stood up. He was headed toward the back of the plane to take a nap, and he hit the ground. And from what the doctors told me, he was dead before he hit the ground. That the defibrillator, even the defibrillator, wouldn't work. That supposedly the defibrillator does some type of check, for some type of, it has to sense something. And the defibrillator got nothing. So like the defibrillator, I'm told, wouldn't even have jump started his heart because there was nothing left to jump start. So he ended up being DOA. See, here's the thing. I don't know exactly if he was considered dead on arrival to the hospital or dead when they landed the plane, but the reality is he was, the reality is he died. He died in that plane. For reasons, it's possible that his official medical, he may not have shown him dead until he was at the hospital. But if that's true, then that's just the way they do things. He was dead. He was dead before they hit the ground. And I know because so I was there in Vancouver. We were there. I was at his hotel room, and we were, I don't know if it's the Four Seasons or what. It was the fanciest hotel that they have in Vancouver. And we had the penthouse. We had the penthouse. It was an incredible view across the bay. I mean, as beautiful. And so we were having work done at the room. Like we needed the entire, the floors had to be covered in carpet because we didn't want anywhere for him to slip. And it was all these people working. And in the middle of it all, we got the call that, when you hear a call and somebody's just crying on the line and you know that person was on the plane with him and they're just crying, you're like, well, shit. We all realized what had happened. And I ended up being charged somehow. And I told everybody, I told the hotel basically that at this point it really didn't matter what they wanted to do. It was pretty clear Mr. Frank was not showing up. And the hotel's like, well, we already paid them. We already paid them to work. So we're just going to have them keep working. I'm like, okay, well, you do what you got to do. We had to leave. We ended up leaving. Not only did we leave his car, his bulletproof Maybach, it was filled with stuff, video camera equipment. We left it all there. We needed to get back to San Diego because that's where we were going to bring the body to, and we had to get everyone back to San Diego. So I got the few of us who were up in Vancouver back down to San Diego. We had to we had to take we had to go through Vegas. There was no direct flights. I had to go through Vegas. I ended up getting into a hotel at like 1 or 2 a.m. in San Diego. The Residence Inn La Jolla, my go-to hotel, was booked solid. I couldn't get a room there. I ended up at some shitty hotel I'd never ever stayed at before, and all I wanted was a bottle of water, and they didn't have it. They had no water in their room, and so I was like, there's got to be some place I can get water, but it's 1 in the morning, and I ended up at a gas station, but the gas station was closed. Like the inside was closed. All you could do was pay for gas on the outside. And I told the guy, I was like, listen, please, sir, I need a bottle of water. And he's like, he wasn't allowed to walk. The front door was closed because they were washing the floors and he weren't allowed to walk over the floor. So I said, listen, I need it. I need water. And so he made me pay for it, which was fine. But he then threw the bottle. He threw the bottle over the floor, out the door, and I caught it. And I was like, thank you. I was just so fucking happy. I had a liter bottle of water. My mouth had been so dry. And then that next day, we came up with the plan to get an entire JetBlue plane, just for the people going back to New York. Um, his daughter figured prominently in a highly publicized case regarding her grandfather's will that led to the disbarment of controversial lawyer Ron Cohn. In 1975, Cohn entered the hospital room of a dying and comatose Rosenstiel, forced a pen to his hand, and lifted it to the will. Wow. The resulting marks were determined in court to be indecipherable and in no way a valid signature. I got to tell you, if you saw my signature, you would also say that, but it is indeed a valid signature. In 1986, Cohn was disbarred for unethical and unprofessional conduct. Wow. How does that happen? Sidney Frank and his son also sued the estate in separate action. Jägermeister brought the entire company, and Kathy Frank is no longer an officer in the Jägermeister owned company. Okay, so at least they updated it somewhere. Sidney Frank Importing Company, SFIC, changed its name to Mast Jägermeister US after its takeover by the German herbal liqueur producer in 2015. Yes. Right. Further reading, the Willie Fox behind Grey Goose Business Week article, September 20th, 2004. Frank J. Pennell, the seller of Grey Goose that laid a golden egg. New York Times, January 1, 2005. Matthew Miller, the bartender, a Forbes article from October 2004. And Seth Sketcher, Martini Wonderland. Now that is a legit book. That is an actual book by one of Mr. Frank's personal attorneys. It's actually, I gave the book, I read the book, I gave the book, it's easy reading, it's relatively short. You can finish it in a day, no problem. I gave it high marks. Now, it's not all true. He definitely uses some significant creative license, but it gives you a fairly honest representation of what it was like to work for Mr. Frank. It's not 100%. He certainly exaggerates some things, but I get it. He also changes the names of just about everybody, but it's funny because he typoed a name, so one name doesn't change because he typoed it. And when he did the search and replace, obviously he didn't find it because it wasn't the correct spelling, which is something that, like, I think happened to Michael Scott in The Office. So I thought that was funny. Anyway, so they said Mr. Frank was a great guy, and I remember from the very beginning when I was there to be interviewed, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was asking if I was if I could cook. He was asking if I could cook, and he also asked if I could play golf. He wasn't asking because he expected me to cook or expected me to play golf, but he knew that if it turned out I was a shitty engineer, or more to the point, I suspect that if it turned out he didn't really know why he needed an engineer, or I couldn't do what he wanted, or whatever the reason, he doesn't like firing anybody. So he literally has made people in the past into other things. Like he had the guy who was making the fruitcakes at Christmas time. They made him a chef, even though he had no formal training as a chef. He was just a German guy who could cook German food, and so he became a chef. And God knows how many people he had who couldn't do anything, but they played golf. So if you could play golf, you could be part of his golf entourage. And those people used to really bring in the money, even though, well, there were technical reasons why people, if you were a professional golfer or a amateur golfer, you technically weren't allowed to make money playing golf. So wink, wink, nod, nod. A lot of amateur golfers had their families members as technically employees of the company, because family members could certainly make money, even though amateur golfers could not. Stanley says that's what happened in Succession. You know, I watched some of Succession, and I don't know exactly to what you're talking about, but I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if some of Succession's or other shows get their shows stories from this, because I there is no doubt at all that if I was talking to the right people, that there is stuff here for either a bang out TV show or a book or a movie or something. I mean, it's there. It's here. I don't have the time, I don't think, anymore. And I feel like I've lost. There's so much things I lost, I've forgotten. Pictures of photos of people whose names I used to know are now just memories, long, distant memories. There's a Sidney E. Frank skate park going up to New Rochelle from the office to his house. He was a big fan of law enforcement. We all got our cards. We all got cards from the New Rochelle Police Department. Some of us got cards from the FBI. Mr. Frank used to hire former FBI, not agents, above agents, deputy directors, former FBI deputy director, like from the X-Files, Deputy Director Skinner. Well, when Deputy Director Skinner was ready to retire from the FBI, somebody like Mr. Frank would hire him. And he would be able to get Mr. Frank access to FBI background checks, but also what Mr. Frank really liked was when he was landing somewhere in his private jet, which was technically Warren Buffett's private jet. He liked to have a police escort. So in those days, that's what you do. We'd have the police escorting Mr. Frank. I know we had it. I know we had it in to Brown University. I know we had the police escort in Chicago. That was a crazy one. The Chicago trip, San Diego, Las Vegas. Yeah, he very much enjoyed his police escorts. And so, of course, he would volunteer his employees to the police. So I helped police on some things, some cases, probably in a completely unofficial capacity. But yeah, and you're like, good, now you're like, now you help them, now they'll help you. And it says, oh, like, make sure you get their card. And so I had in my wallet, if I'd ever been pulled over or whatever, I had a card from the New York Detectives Association, the New Rochelle Police. What's that? What's the head guy of a police department? No, not captain. Commissioner, police commissioner. I had the police commissioner of New Rochelle's name and badge info. And I had also a retired FBI deputy commissioner info. So I was hot shit for a while. Unfortunately, over time, all those people since left. But they don't use my wallet anymore anyway. We traveled quite a bit with Mr. Frank. My biggest trips was literally almost a month we spent in the Bahamas. Mr. Frank went to Ocean Club, which is part of Atlantis, the Atlantis Hotel in Paradise Island. It's the big hotel where there's the room that stretches between the two big towers that Michael Jackson used to stay in when he would go. All the sports stars would stay in that room. Mr. Frank could have stayed in that room, but rather than see, that's the room where the people who want attention stay. The people who don't want attention, who value their privacy, they stay in Ocean Club, where the rooms are much bigger and nicer, but they're closer to the ground. They're in their own private, uh, buildings. They're not up in the middle, forcing everybody to see them. And in Ocean Club, you got your own butler with your room, and we would come in and we would bring in our own refrigerators, our own fax machines, our own computer terminals, and I would have to get them all working, get the computers working as if they were in the New York office. And so that was my reason for going. And this was my very first big trip. And stupid me, when I got asked, I thought somebody would explain to me how to do this, but no, nobody did. When I was asked, I got there to the Bahamas and they said, "Are you here for work or for pleasure?" I said, "For work," because I was there for work. And let me tell you, that is the wrong answer. It is never the right answer to say you going somewhere for work. Even if you are, you lie. Even if you are, you lie. He's like, "Oh, you're here for work, huh?" Like, "Yeah." He's like, "Come with me." And I get called down this long hallway. He's like, "Have a seat." I'm sitting in front of a desk. This guy is looking at me, giving me the stink eye. I'm like, uh-oh. I was like, maybe I should just plead stupid and say, "Did I say work? I meant pleasure." But I couldn't do it. I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "So who are you working for?" I said, "I work for Sidney Frank Importing Company." Like, "What's going on?" I was like, "Nothing. My boss is here. He wants me to do work for him." "And what type of work do you do?" I was like, "I'm an electrical engineer. I do all types of things." I was like, "I expect that I'll be setting up his computer and his printer and this and that." And he's like, "Isn't there somebody here that could do that?" And I was being honest. I said, "Probably, but it would take them, hours or weeks to learn what to do, where I can do it. I could do it much quicker. We don't have time for that." And he's like, I was not giving him any good answers. And he straight up told me, he's like, "Well, from what you're telling me, you're here to take job." He's like, I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "They're supposed to hire local." He's like, "You're taking jobs away from people here." And I kind of realized, I was like, uh-oh, I'm fucked. I'm fucked. Nobody told me to lie. I wasn't comfortable lying, but now I'm really not comfortable. Anyway, I realized, I said, "Aha, I know what this situation calls for. A bribe." So I said, in my voice, trying to recover, I said, "I'm sorry, sir. Is there a fine I could pay?" And he's like, "Yeah, $100. I said 100 US. He said it's the same. The the exchange rate is 1 for 1. I don't care. It's 100. It's 100. I'm like, okay. So I pulled out my wallet. I was going to go for the 100, but then I pulled out 5 20s and I gave it to him, and he let me leave. Oh, yeah. And that was just getting to the Bahamas. Obviously, it was lots of fun. Once we were there, the first day, night, well, the first day, we were, his secretary was trying to do her best to save money, and she booked us at a different hotel. It was close to Ocean Club, closer to Ocean Club, but it was not part of Atlantis. And the reality is that all of Paradise Island is pretty much owned by Atlantis. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't do anything on Paradise Island unless you were staying at an Atlantis property. And if you're at an Atlantis hotel, you could go to the casino, you could go to the restaurants, you could go to their to stuff across the street. You'd use their beach. You could go anywhere, do anything. But for whatever reason, and we know the reason, was that even the cheapest Atlantis hotel was a little bit more expensive than this other hotel that she booked us at. I personally had no problem with the hotel. I got there, I unpacked, I thought everything was okay. I thought we were going to have a decent month, but all the other people I went with, all the other employees, whatever, they did not want to stay at this place. They wanted to go to an Atlantis hotel. And so they did not give me the details because they didn't know if they could trust me or not. And this is where, like I say, you had to play a game. Okay? You had to play a game. There were people that you knew you had to pick a side. You had to pick a side. And the reality was, had Mr. Frank known the difference, he surely would have chosen for all of us to stay in the Atlantis property so that we had stuff to do and we weren't all just sitting around looking out the window, getting angry that, we couldn't be part of we couldn't use the the pools and the lazy river and all the stuff, the water slides, all the stuff Atlantis had to do. Instead, we had this shitty, like, motel, hotel place. Anyway, apparently, some of the reasons that were given for not liking the hotel I was in was apparently someone else said they got sand fleas, that they had opened their suitcase and sand fleas were everywhere. And also, one of the women, apparently, one of the dudes from the hotel just decided that this American woman, that she was there alone, that obviously no woman goes alone to, and this is probably true, like, why would you go alone to a hotel meant for newlyweds? You know, why is this single woman traveling alone to a hotel meant for newlyweds? So this guy who worked at the hotel just thought that, he was going to provide services to this woman. And, maybe she would have been interested any other day of the week, but she really was just there to work, and she was not happy with this guy volunteering his services. So, yeah. So anyway, after all that, the secretary called me and said, "Is it really this bad?" And it's just the kind of thing you had to pick a side, and I was fine with saying, you know what, it really is that bad, because what I didn't like was the fucking water got shut off. The hotel's like, oh yeah, sometimes the water goes off. Sometimes the water goes off. I'm on the fucking 7th floor out of 14 or something. There's nothing. Obviously, you need electricity to pump the water that high. There's nowhere on the island. The water is naturally above 7 stories. I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't live with that. So later that night, rather than let us stay in the shitty motel, we all got rooms in the cheapest Atlantis hotel, of which, I'll be completely honest, I am 100% certain, pound for pound, the hotel room we were booked in that first night was a nicer hotel room than the Atlantis hotel rooms. But when you add up all the free things Atlantis had, and the fact that you were in Atlantis that had all these things on the grounds, then it was by far a much better stay than we would have had staying at that shitty hotel. Anyway, a couple of years later, apparently, that shitty hotel got either knocked down or rebuilt and became part of Atlantis anyway. So it doesn't even exist anymore. What? Did I read anybody's chat? No. This isn't a chat reading. I looked at a couple of Bird Prey 5s. Jedi Bill says, who died? Bill, this is Sidney E. Frank, my old boss. He died on this day, January 10th, 2006. And so I'm just talking about my life. Yes, I'm talking about my life from, I worked there from September 2000, I believe, September 2000 till, well, I ended up in the hospital in May 2009, but my last technical day of work was December, whatever, 2009.
Oh, but you were on the books.
I was on the books working. My last physical day in the office was May 8th, 2009. Stan Lee says, stood up at the altar, already paid for the honeymoon. Oh, who would go? Yeah, I guess that's a possibility. After, well, that was one trip. Another amazing trip was Hawaii. We spent a month in Hawaii. First, the first few nights was on Maui. Unfortunately, the area that got burned, the recent wildfires, that whole area, that's where we were. Very sad. Then we moved to Lanai. Lanai is almost like a private island. We spent a couple of weeks there. I got there first. It was incredible. He had the biggest, nicest hotel room on the island, and I got to stay in it the first night myself. Again, this was all from the New York secretary deciding, oh, we can save money since Joe's got to be there anyway. Let Joe have the hotel room for the night, and then he can just go to a regular hotel room the next day. And I get it, and don't get me wrong, I do enjoy sleeping in this fucking monstrosity of a room with its own butler, again, with its own butler, although I could never use a butler. So I was like, no thanks. But I mean, I had my room service. I had Futurama playing on the giant screen television I installed. And by giant screen, I mean huge whiteboard that a projector projection screen. And I set it up, and I had my VCR, and like with most hotels, I was able to crack into their TV system, and I could get all the channels that the hotel has. And that, for those who don't know, if your hotel offered porn channels, that meant the porn was playing 24/7. So all you needed was a way to access it. And sure enough, the way I had happened to work. So you had no choice but to scroll through the porn channels as you were scrolling through all the other channels. And if anybody in the hotel, maybe not anyone in the hotel, but anyone in your area, vicinity of the hotel, paid for a movie, you would see the movie too. Now, granted, it would start and stop when the person playing it, paid for it, started and stopped it. But yeah, you get to see it too. That was interesting. Jedi Bale says, thank you, Bird. Qapla, sorry again. I was only kidding. Didn't mean to come across seriously. I don't know what you're apologizing for, Bill, but no worries. It's all good. It's anyway. Yeah, so the Hawaii trip, and then after the time on Lanai, where I sunk a Jeep, we headed on to Big Island. Big Island, oh, so much lava. It's so dark. It's scary. Like the lava sucks the light. It sucks the light out. And very dark. And there one of my Jeeps, a rental Jeep, broke. The transmission broke. Had to get a new one. I was waiting for hours. Luckily, I made it to a place that had cell service, just barely. Kronos says, Bird, I lived for over 12 hours without power. Sorry to hear that, Kronos, but glad you made it. Glad you made it. And then I was also the London trip. The London trip, the rare times in my life I was regularly drinking alcohol, pretty much for 2 weeks. 2 weeks straight, I'd get drunk almost every night. And I love the fact that, damn it, we were at the Mayfair. No, not the Mayfair. Carol's? Shit. I forget the name of the hotel. I think it's with a C. Carol's? I don't know. Claridge's. The Claridge's, Mayfair, London, old school, like UK, very old school style hotel. They had fruit bowls fruit bowls in every room, and they would see what fruits you ate and bring back and replace them every night with more of them. Those were delicious. I never ate more fruit in my life. Just having a bowl of fruit around that you could snack from. Sure enough, I did. And magically, they'd replace it.
And then I looked at all the food on the table.
No, it doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. And also, when you bought a book, I went out, I bought a couple of books, I came back, and they put in, they automatically put into each book those page bookmarks. They used to also, you could leave your shoes outside your door, and they would polish them every night. Of course, I wasn't wearing fancy shoes, so I didn't do that. But yeah, they offered a service where like they would allow their high like the people like Mr. Frank, they could keep a suitcase. It's stored in their basement. So we left a suitcase of stuff stored for next time we were going back, but unfortunately he died. And I did see that they did in fact mail the suitcase back to his daughter. So I don't know what she did with it. I doubt she did anything. But it was full of electronics. It had some Bose radios and a screen projector, so we could put another big screen TV. Probably just gave it all away. Yeah, I am getting hungry. Oh, I'm going to go, guys. Mr. Frank, he was a really cool guy. He was very generous, and I don't know. The day's got to come. We gotta talk more about him. Talk more about my time there, and my friends, and his family and friends, and I don't know. There's good stuff there. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about him soon. Thank you all for coming. I'm not forgetting about the chat, Kronos. This was never going to be about the chat today. This was always going to be about Mr. Frank. So thank you all, though. Thank you, John Araki, for the memberships and the super chat. And I thank you all. So, Qapla all, bird out.